Guys, it's Kai and I'm so glad you're here.
Why are you such a copycat?
By the way, I finally came up with a new intro and outro, and do you like it? Because I'm kind of obsessed with it. But hello, I am back. I officially have decided that I want to start doing story times again. And this one seemed like a really good one to tell. Now, most of you are going to think I'm crazy. I mean, okay, to be fair, if you clicked on the title, you know what you're getting into, but you still probably are gonna think I'm crazy. But before I get into the actual story, and by the way, I posted a poll on Twitter and you guys voted for this one, so this is your doing. No, I'm just kidding. But there's something I want to say before I start actually talking about what happened, just to kind of preface and get you guys in the right headspace. I don't really talk about this a lot on my channel, partly because I don't know, I'm always nervous about people's reactions and whatever, but I practice witchcraft. It's just a thing. I've been doing it for a long time now, and it's a big part of my life, and it's very important in regard to this story. I just realized I might be speaking really loudly because you're literally right here, so maybe I should not. But yeah, so I practice witchcraft and I just kind of wanted to get that out in the open before I start talking about this, and everybody gets confused and weirded out and like, why do you think this is real? This is why. So without further ado, I guess let's just get into it. Now, the first time I've ever experienced a fairy, I actually talked about already on my channel. It's called I Saw a Fairy in My Bedroom, and it's a story time. I'll leave the link below and probably have it on a card right here, if I can remember. Yeah, so I saw a fairy when I was a kid, and I've always been really interested in fairies and the Fae and that whole thing. And for the longest time, I'd actually kind of forgotten about that fairy story until I started watching Haley Reese, and then it kind of just like made something click in my head, and I was like, oh my god, that's right. So after that, I kind of got in this like, I want to research fairies mood, and so I started like researching the Fae and how people actually use them in witchcraft in a similar way that you kind of like call the elements, like you can work with the Fae. And I probably should have like looked up things to like explain to you how this is used, but basically in my research what I've seen is that it's like Fae are magical folk, and they can be mermaids or fairies or gnomes or any of those other little things. It's like a huge term. It's just like saying humans, you know, like, except more expansive than that actually, but whatever. So there are a bunch of different kinds of Fae, and they can look very different in our world. Now, it gets a little tricky because one of the things people say is that like a lot of the Fae like to be creatures with wings, which makes sense. You know, you see cute little fairies and that's like the only thing that people know about, but there are like wicked Fae and other kinds of things, but a lot of them like to fly. Obviously, most people don't see Fae, especially not as adults, and so typically they'll kind of manifest themselves as like creatures we're already familiar with that have wings, like birds or insects or things like that, like butterflies, dragonflies, etc., that kind of thing, which honestly makes sense. But it gets tricky because it's like not every bird is a Fae, you know what I mean? Not every dragonfly or butterfly is a fairy, like things like that, you know what I mean? But they can manifest themselves that way. So, all that being said, I was doing research and I had started leaving out offerings for the Fae at this time. This was in like October-ish of last year, 2017. I remember learning that they liked sweet things. I found out later I left them cloves at one point because I have like a jar full of cloves and I don't really use them for any of my spells or anything. I just got them a long time ago because I thought I might. And so I was like, oh, maybe they'd like some of this, and I crushed it up and put it in a little jar and set it outside, and then like I had bad luck for a little bit, and then I figured out that they hate cloves. So if you want to start working with the Fae for any reason, do not offer them cloves because they hate it and they will mess up your life. But yeah, so that was a thing. But other than that, whenever I'd leave them offerings, a lot of the time they would like be gone, and then I'd just feel like good, or like good things would happen. Anyway, I was working with the Fae and things seemed to be going pretty well, and I was very excited about it. And then we moved, and it was a little different out there because it like, I was living in like the city that I'm living in now, actually not far from where I'm living right now. I was living out here, but when I moved way out in the middle of nowhere. Like there were like no plants, no anything. Like it was just, when you picture the desert, like an abandoned desert, like that's basically where I lived. I hated it out there. It's called Hinkley. It's awful. I posted some pictures that were kind of pretty, but that's it. Anyway, I hated everything about that place. I'm considering doing a story time on like that house and living with that lady and all the cats. There were so many cats. Like, I love cats, I'm a crazy cat lady, but the amount of cats that were at this house was ridiculous. Like, you can't walk anywhere because there is a crowd of cats on the floor. Ridiculous. Like, bad. But that's for another time. But basically, Connor and I were sharing this tiny little room in this house that was crowded with people and cats at all times. And the only place I had out there that was mine, like I was out in the desert, like there was nowhere that I couldn't go into woods and have privacy because it was the desert. Like there were a few trees here and there, but that was it. Like anyone could see me anywhere, and we did have neighbors like really close by, but it was like this little group of houses and then nothing, you know? Anyway, so the only place that I could go to get any kind of solace or sanctuary or whatever was my car. Which is kind of just a weird thing to like go and get privacy by just sitting in your car, but that's what I started doing. I started going out there when I wanted to meditate because it was so loud inside that house because the woman was very loud. She also had a kid, and then we lived with 2 other people, and then there were all the cats, and then there were dogs outside, and at one point the lady's old girlfriend moved back in, and then they started fighting all the time, and there was just a lot of noise, and I didn't need the noise. I needed more like space, which is funny because I was sitting in a car instead of a room, but it felt like I had more space because it was less cluttered. And anyway, point is, I was still trying to work with the Fae, and I remember one day specifically, I left out an offering. I learned that they like red and yellow colors and stuff like that, and like sweets and everything else, and so I got some Skittles. I had like a bag of Skittles, and I broke up some of the red and yellow ones and put them in a little dish and set it outside for the Fae. And I think I put like sugar on it too. I also, by the way, was recording my stuff in this book because it started out as just a journal, and now it's kind of just like a book of shadows. This is the entry about the first time that I saw a fairy. I've written rune informations and other stuff like that in here. And so yeah, and I actually forgot about this until I was looking over this journal to remember like all the details about this story. And I wrote an entry on November 12th. This was after I left the offering. It had been a few days, and I went outside to check on it because I was trying to spend more time outside of the house. And anyway, so I wrote this entry, and I'm just gonna read it to you because I have this feather and I want to explain why, and also kind of just like demonstrate like the level of like increase that was like happening with my experiences with the Fae. Like I had, I swear I thought I had seen one in my room by that point. There was also a day I was doing research, and I think it was in the other book that I have. I have 3 books of shadows. I have this one where I do a lot of personal experiences. I have one where I like to like sketch big things when I'm doing information stuff, and then I have one just for spells, but I think it's in the sketchbook one. But I was doing like more Fae research, and I remember I had looked up like, it was one of their sacred symbols. I don't remember which one it was specifically. I have it like in there, but I'm not gonna get up and go get it because, you know, I'd have to refocus. But I was looking up that symbol, and I was like, I wanted to draw like these things in the sketchbook so I could like have a visual representation and things like that. And the image I had on Tumblr was, which is where I found it, wasn't good enough, and so I went on Google to like search like an easier version to draw. And as soon as I Googled it, my computer crashed, and after that, my battery was dead. I have had the same laptop for like 3 years now, 4 years now, something crazy like that. Never had issues like that with the battery, literally ever. And then out of nowhere, as I'm searching that symbol, my computer crashed, and I was like, well, that was weird, but whatever. So I plugged it in thinking, oh, my battery must have just died. When I turned it back on, I mean, it was still working, but then as soon as I unplugged it, it died again. And I was like, well, that's really weird. So I plugged it back in again, turned it back on, and it was fine. After that, my battery was so dead that my computer had to be plugged in at all times or it wouldn't turn on. Like the battery was completely fried. I had to buy a new battery, take apart my computer, and put it back in, and then put it back because it's put together weird. Anyway, so I'm gonna read this entry real quick, and this is after that happened, I believe. That's actually part of why I wound up leaving that offering, because I was like, I wanted to work with them and whatever, but I also felt like I had disrespected them or something like that, and so they made my computer crash. I don't know. But anyway, so I went outside, I left an offering, and then this other day I went outside. Finally went back outside to check on the offering I left the Fae last week. It's largely untouched but covered in ants. I left a few red and yellow Skittles broken up into small pieces so they're easy to pick up, and a piece of a cookies and cream Pop-Tart. I guess they didn't want it, but appreciated the effort because the ants had taken over, and I found a feather on the ground right beside it. I wish I'd taken a picture before picking it up. I also just realized I accidentally said thank you when I picked it up. Now, it was only one place, but I did see in my research that you're not supposed to thank the Fae, just show appreciation. Shit. I'll update if shit gets bad. Sorry, Fae. And then I taped the feather that I found to this, which I know is not sanitary, but it's fine. I want this to be a very like physical kind of gay. It's just auras. But I want this to be kind of like a very physical kind of book, and I like learning physically anyway. So I was still trying to communicate with them, trying to leave them offerings, things like that, and I had been going out to my car at night for probably a week or two at that point and meditating every single night. I would like to preface this by saying that all of my car doors worked before this. All 4 of them worked just fine from the inside and the outside. Just wanted to say that. And I know that especially because when I was meditating in the back seat because I didn't want to like sit at the wheel and try to meditate because then there's stuff in the way. Didn't want to sit in the passenger seat because then I still wasn't centered and it still felt like it was going to be in the way because of the gear shift. So I thought the back would be best and I could push both of the front seats forward to make as much room as I could. Use the little cup holders for candles, which is what I usually did, and I'd light the candles and put blankets up around my windows so that nobody could see me. It was a whole ordeal, but I felt very comfortable and safe in there, and so I would sit in the back seat in the exact middle with candles lit and just like meditate.
Ryan Little.
And like I said, I'd been doing this for a little while at that point, like probably a week or two, something like that. And I don't do it as much anymore. I should get back into it. I've been trying to, but it's, anyway. 4 days after that entry with the bird feather, on November 16th, 2017, I made another entry about meeting the Fae. I'm not just gonna read straight from this entry, but I am gonna reference it a few times because it has details that I had forgotten about. But when I meditate, I generally go to this place that I've kind of created in my mind, and this is a tactic that a lot of places tell you that you should do, especially like for witchcraft and stuff like that. Like if you really want to meditate and kind of tap into that part of your mind, like make a mind garden where you feel safe and then you can just kind of chill there and you can come to realizations and whatever. I, for whatever reason, filled mine with like magical creatures because I'm me, I don't know, it just felt right. But so here's what mine looks like. First I have to, you know, clear my mind and get it to like this like white place, and then there are 2 big doors that open. And when those 2 big doors open, I go through and there are guards standing on either side, and they look at me because they don't want to let anybody else in. That's why I put them there, so that I feel safer. So they look at me and then they shut the doors behind me, and then there's another like wall, and then I pass through that and there are 2 more security guards right here. Gotta be safe, I guess, just in case, I don't know. But they're standing here. This is just like a kind of opening, you know, it's not like a gate, but I just like walk through the doors, they shut the doors, and then I walk through this part. Now, when I walk through that part, I'm sorry, I feel really out of breath right now. But when I walk through that part, like the archway, it's like this big like dirt path, and then there's like woods surrounding either side of the path, and it's really wide, and then there's like grass and stuff and like a bunch of undergrowth and etc. It's like super green, but the path itself is just like dirt. And so I'll kind of walk down and like, you know, look up at the sky, look at the trees, blah blah blah, and as I'm going down, there's nothing on the left side typically. It's just a bunch of woods. But on the right side, eventually there's a path that goes this way, and so I'll turn this way, and this path is much more small, but it's still the same story, like it's dirt and there's wood surrounding me, but that path is going into the woods. So I go into the woods, and there's like this river that I come up to, and then there's a nymph who's like dancing and whatever, and for the longest time I remember she was like petrified of something. Like I would go over there and she'd look at me really scared and like point over in the corner, but I couldn't see where anything was. Like I come out of this little path, and then there's like this area and it's all land, and then there's like a river beside it, and she's dancing right here, and there's something like over this way that's kind of shrouded by trees, but I can't really see it. It looks like there's like an old like stone house that's kind of crumbling, and she would always like look at me freaked out and point at the house like, oh no, but would never tell me what was happening because she was scared or something, I don't know, and she'd just keep dancing. Weird information, I know. But so I'd never actually gone all the way over there, but I knew that, you know, there's this river right here, and it like connects over there as well, and there's like a little path on the other side of the river that connects up there. I knew all that. Now if I come back out of that and go back down the main path, eventually it opens up like this, and then there's the ocean, and then there are a few mermaids, and there's a little bit of shore right before that. So, you know, it like opens up, and then you're like on a beach, and then there's the ocean, and there are mermaids just chilling everywhere. There are like big boulders in some places, and they're all really nice, and they all like each other, and they're all friends. I'm a child. Oh, actually, also I should mention, mermaids actually are considered fae. So that's cool. Also, I think nymphs are too, but I just have always like been really interested in nymphs and mermaids, so they're just there, I don't know. Anyway, so, you know, I'll usually go and talk to the mermaids and whatever. And then when I'm done, because, you know, the ocean's like my happy place too, and so that helps, and I also like the forest. And anyway, so once I relax, I'll usually just leave. Now this time, I went there and I did the same thing I usually do, where I go down the right path, and then was like scared again and pointing, and I realized, oh, okay, so she means the house. I was scared at first because I thought she meant like there's someone inside the house who's scary. Turns out it's just that the house was falling down and she wanted me to fix it. And so I fixed up the house and she wasn't scared anymore, and she was dancing around and all happy. And since I had finally gone over there at that point, I decided to go down the little path, and then I kind of got in the river and was just kind of like letting myself float a little bit. Then it turns out that that river connects to the ocean. So that's really cool. I didn't even have to go back out and go down. I just went through the river and then came out on this side of the ocean. And then the mermaids were like, oh hey, and I got up to the shore and then hung out over there for a little bit. Then I noticed, as I'm looking at the ocean, I look up and there's like this like overlook thing over here, right? And it was kind of weird because I've never seen that here before, and I've been to my like mind garden place, or whatever you want to call it, a bunch of times. Like every time I meditate just about, I try to go there. And so I was like, that's weird, like I didn't put that there, huh? I remember the mermaids kind of like encouraged me to go check it out because they thought it was cool, and they made sure to tell me like, if you fall off, it's okay because you'll get wings just long enough to get you back up on there, so you'll be fine, like you're not gonna fall off of it. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't know, I guess I'm like really concerned about safety in these places. I don't know, it's fine. But so I go back on the main path, and then there is another path on the other side that's usually just solid woods. So you know, if I'm like going down facing the ocean, there's like the one on the right, but then there's nothing on the left. This time there was a path that way, and it was about the same place that the right one was. Though I guess because I was facing it, it was to the right, but I'm just trying to like put it in perspective. Anyway, a path opened up over there. I'd never seen this path before. It wasn't there whenever I was first coming, or at least I didn't see it when I was first coming down. But I was like, okay, cool, well maybe, you know, they put this little overlook here while I was gone to like give a surprise. That's cool. So I remember like going through this path, and then I kind of like went up and up. It was like a very steep spiral staircase. It was very steep. And so I went all the way up and eventually kind of came up, and then there's like this platform, and then it's like round over here. And so I walked over here, and I noticed there was like a way down on the other side, but I was like, first I'm gonna look at the overlook. So I walked across, went over to like the circular area, and there's like this wall, kind of like a halfway wall, and then there's like a boulder, and I like looked down and all the mermaids were waving up at me, and so I waved down at them and whatever. So I was looking over there, and then I decided to go check out the other part, you know, the part that went down. Not the one that I came up on, not like the spiral staircase, but remember whenever I came up, there was like a little platform before it opened up into a circle, and there was like one that was going down very steep on that other side. So I decided to go over and look at it, and it's weird because it looked like stairs, but they were so steep. There's no way you could just like walk down it normally without almost falling, and so I just kind of decided to sit down and slide down it. And it was like the stairs kind of like smoothed out when I decided to do that, so it was kind of more of like a wooden slide. And so I remember I went down, and then it kind of spiraled, and it spiraled really big a few times, and then I kind of like slid through and landed like that onto a canopy, or I guess under a canopy. It was like on like a big leaf, but it was like a leaf on the ground, and then it was like, you know, canopied by other trees, you know? It was clear that this wasn't like the woods that I had seen whenever I was walking down the main path, and it's just like a bunch of tall trees, because I was like way below all of that. Like I didn't know that this area existed, so I was literally under the woods. I don't know, it was really cool though. So I plop out over there, and I remember seeing in this, there was actually a little bit of corn growing like right around, because where I landed it was kind of like a circular-ish area. It was like, you know, just dirt, like solid earth, you know, but it was like kind of circular where I plopped out on, and it was covered by like a giant leaf. And then there was like corn crops growing around like this side of the little circle, and then there were, you know, trees that were like really tall and like giving a lot of shade, and it was like not dim but like very shady, you know. And there were butterflies absolutely everywhere, and then I looked down, and there's what looks like a little gnome just standing right in front of me. He had on like a red kind of pointy-ish hat, you know, typical like gnome imagery, and he just kind of looked at me like he expected me to follow him, and then he turned around and started walking. Now it was like a big circle, and then it just kind of went through this path. It wasn't like he was going through trees or anything. There was a little very slim path, and I followed him down it. And it was very windy, and eventually we got to these giant doors. When I say giant, I don't just mean like, oh, you know, the gnome's this tall and it's like a human-sized door. Like, he was like probably like this tall total, but like these doors were as if I were a gnome going into a human-sized door. Like, they were massive. It was like floor to ceiling, even though there was no ceiling because we were in the woods. But like, he kind of just like stood in front of it and just like knocked, and then they opened outwardly. We had to back up a couple steps, and then he led me through and disappeared into the crowd. Now, when I walked in, why is my heart beating so fast right now? Anyway, when I walked in, I remembered that the audience was like very hard to see. Like, this was like, basically it looked like, you know, the entryway to a castle, and it was so slam-packed full. There were like tables, like rows of tables, and I could tell that there were a bunch of creatures in here, but I couldn't look directly at any of them. Out of the corner of my eye, I was seeing a bunch of dragonflies and butterflies and snakes and mermaids and a bunch of other things out of the corner of my eye, but I couldn't directly look at any of them, and it was really weird. And even as I like went up through this path all the way to where, like, you know, at the end there was like the little raised floor and then like the throne and whatever, and like the court who were standing behind the guy on the throne, like I couldn't see any of them like clearly. Even who I guess was like the king fairy was like sitting on that throne. I couldn't even like make out the exact features of his face, but I remember he was just like sitting on this throne and calling me forty. He had a really loud booming voice. And it was weird because even though I couldn't see anything clearly, I could hear everything perfectly. Like, it was like crystal clear as if it were real. Which again is just weird because usually in that mind garden, like even when I do talk to the mermaids or the nymph or whatever, like it's like they can't give me like specific words, they just kind of give me feelings, and like I feel like we're talking, but I was hearing like conversations. Like, it was, anyway, I mean, like too many at once to like make out words at that point as I was walking up, but still, like when things did happen, like I could hear specific voices. So I walk up to this throne, and for whatever reason, I was remembering the research that I had done like back before I moved, and there was this one video that had said, first of all, not to thank the Fae, and then there was another part of it that said to like ask them for like a fairy guide or something like that, but be careful about signing contracts because, you know, they can be tricky and stuff like that. I don't know. So I was thinking about that, and as I got up there, I was like, well, I guess I should do this now. And so, you know, the Fae King like asked me to introduce myself or whatever, and I asked the king for a fairy guide because, you know, that's what I thought I was supposed to do. He granted me, and I wrote this, I'm gonna read directly from this. The king granted me what he called a fairy guide or mimic. I don't know why he phrased it like that was his sentence. I put that in quotation marks, and by the way, I wrote this, literally, I meditated, I had this experience, and I got out of my car and went inside and wrote it down. Like, this is immediately after, and that's why it's like so messy too, because I was just like, oh my god, I gotta get it all down. But yeah, the words that he used was fairy guide or mimic. Not sure what that means still, I haven't actually thought to look into it, but I probably should. And then he gave me a few conditions on a page that I couldn't read, which makes sense, like it would be in another language probably. So the king kind of presented this paper to me saying like, these are the conditions of you having a fairy guide or mimic and blah blah blah, and again, I couldn't read it, but he did say a few of them out loud to me. Hopefully it was all of them, but. So here's what I wrote down, because again, this is the part that like starts to get really fuzzy for me, and so I'm going to read like what I wrote right here, because like specific things that he said to me when he handed me this paper, it gets a little fuzzy for me, so I'm gonna read directly from this. But he said not to spread the existence of fairies, and when I read over that earlier, I was already planning on doing this video, and I put the poll up and like asked like if they wanted to see this, and I kind of got like a sinking feeling like, oh no, like is this spreading the existence of fairies? I don't know. And I actually wrote down, and I do remember this part, when I asked him what he meant by that, he didn't like respond to that. Like, he didn't like clarify. He just said, do not spread the existence of fairies, and I asked him what he meant, and he just moved on to the next thing. He said very forcefully, in like a very like kind of visceral like booming voice, and this is like the most clear image I have in my head of this whole thing. I mean, it's all very like vivid, like it was very real, but this part specifically pops in my head all the time. This man, this is the only time I could kind of make out his face, and it was mostly just like his mouth area, you know, and like the big white beard that he had or whatever. It was like a nice full white beard, you know. He looked at me and kind of leaned forward and said, do not thank us. Exactly like that. He actually spat a little bit when he said it because he was very like adamant, and I was like, shit, okay. Which, like, I had seen that in my research, not just from that one video. I don't know why I wrote one place in here, but I had seen it in a video, and I had also, I think I'd seen it somewhere else online when I was doing research, like somebody had written it out. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm making that up now, but I had definitely seen it in my research that you shouldn't say thank you to the Fae, which I've done a few times accidentally, and every time I've been like, shit, oh, I messed up, oh no. But he did say that, and that was like very like potent. But as soon as he said that, I didn't even like have a chance to like say anything back. I heard like what sounded like doors slamming, and then I just opened my eyes. Like involuntarily too. It wasn't like I was just like, okay, oh, it's all black now, I guess I'll open my eyes. Like I was like there, and I had like forgotten my eyes were closed because it was so vivid, and I was standing in front of this Fae King, and then suddenly the doors closed and my eyes just opened, and I was like, forgot I was in my car. Oh, I should probably blow these candles out real quick. So I blew up the candles and then gathered all my things in my bag, took down the blankets, and went back inside. Immediately sat down and jotted down my experiences in this journal, and that's it. So yeah, I really hope this video is not like breaking that rule, because I didn't even really like, ooh. But it's fine, you probably all think I'm crazy anyway, so it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I kind of wanted to just remember that experience as well, because it was so cool and real, and like a lot of these things that happen, it's like, oh, did that really happen? Like it kind of feels like a dream or a memory or whatever, and like these do kind of feel like dreams a little bit, but at the same time, in the moment, I remember it feeling so real. Like it was like as real as if I had been standing there. Like it's like I could feel the ground under my feet, you know, I could hear everyone talking around me, I could like I felt the temperature in there. Like it was just, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Even though I couldn't see their faces, it was still so real that it feels more like a memory than a dream. And I mean, it wasn't even a dream. It was, you know, I was awake, I was just meditating, but it's, I don't know, whatever. So if you may or may not believe me, you're entitled to your own opinion, you know, if you think that I'm absolutely crazy, or if you think that I was like kind of entertaining myself in my head because I was meditating, so I was like half awake, whatever you want to call this, it's up to you. Like you can believe what you want. I know what I believe in my heart, and I believe that I truly did talk to the Fae, because I unironically and 100% genuinely believe in the Fae. And I mean, I have for most of my life, even before I started working with them and doing witchcraft and all that other stuff, but especially now that I work with them and do witchcraft and things like that, it's just like, it's very real for me, and I feel like that was a real experience. And I don't know, I feel really honored and really excited that it happened, and I'm hoping to get to have more like vivid experiences with the Fae in the future. There have been a few times they've like taken things of mine and then given them back, you know, because that's just the thing that happens with them. There was a whole thing with my keys. I feel like I talked about it at some point, but I don't know for sure. But anyway, yeah, I was thinking about doing like a paranormal story time today, or a regular story time, and I thought it would be more fun to kind of tell a really positive one that was really cool for me and kind of impacted a lot of how my life was going around that time. And I don't know, yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Also, I did want to make sure that I told you guys, I was saying for a while that I was gonna kind of go away from story times for a little while, and maybe not come back to them, maybe just occasionally do a derpy one. I've kind of decided that I miss story times, and I love telling them, and like you guys seem to really like them. Every time I ask you guys, you're like, please just give us more story times. And so okay, I'm gonna start doing that, because it feels good for me and I miss it, and I don't know. So yeah, expect to see more story times in the future. I just have to figure out which ones to film and when I'm gonna film them and when I'm gonna put them up. Also, update, because I don't remember if I ever actually officially told you, I'm starting to upload on Wednesdays. Wednesdays are my upload days now. I'm gonna try and upload them by like 11 in the morning, sometimes maybe noon, but usually 11 a.m. because by noon I'm usually playing D&D. What's up, you girl's a nerd. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching, especially to this week's shout out of the week, who will be across the screen right now. What can I say? You're awesome. If you want to be shout out of the week, all you gotta do is be active on all of my socials and you can get featured in a video. With that being said, I love each and every one of you. Subscribe if you haven't already, give me those thumbs, and share this video if you like me. And in the comments, tell me if you've ever had a cool experience like this. Like if you've ever seen the Fae, seen a fairy, seen anything like that, or even just had like a really cool experience while meditating or something like that. Like tell me your stories like this, or any paranormal stories even, because it falls under the same category, and I am always down to hear supernatural paranormal stuff. That's all for today. Stay cool, my dudes, and I'll see you next time.
such a copycat?
You like my new intro and outro because I'm kind of obsessed with them. Like, they're a little bit dorky, but it's my brand. So